Meeting. Relieve the stress. Hold your meeting online from anywhere.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Ian Dale at Drive. Call 0845 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
Hello, very good afternoon. It's Ian Dale at Drive here on LBC, leading Britain's conversation. Thanks for joining us. Coming up over the next 3 hours, we have an hour with the Shadow Chancellor Ed Balls. That's coming up right now. If you'd like to get your calls in, your questions, 0845 6060 973 is the number to call. After 6, 3-parent babies could be born in Britain next year. Britain is set to become the first country in the world to create babies with the DNA of 3 people after the government set out new draft regulations. I'm not sure I approve of that. And after 7, we're going to be talking about David Cameron's visit to Israel. All that coming up here on LBC. 5 minutes past 5. Now, if you want to watch the next hour, which I'm sure you do, just go to lbc.co.uk and we have a live video stream. Ed Balls is with me for another edition of Call Balls. Shadow Chancellor, you don't really like Call Balls, do you? We'll think of another one. If you don't
when
like.
You've lived for 47 years with my surname, then I think you've probably heard them all. So, it's not a huge burden, but, Call Balls. I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether people be rushing into the home saying, got to listen to Call Balls. So I'm not totally persuaded, but Ian.
You know, after this hour.
What else could it be?
I hesitate to say Talk Balls.
No, that would be bad.
No, that would be bad.
How about the other Ed? Hashtag the other Ed.
No, that's a good one. Okay, well, we'll have a think about this.
Call the other Ed.
Between now and the next one, we'll come up with one that everyone approves of.
Anyway, I hope people call anyway.
They are calling, actually, in large numbers. 0845 6060 973. We're going to get as many calls on between now and 6 as possible. We've been talking about Europe and Ed Miliband's speech today in the last hour. And let's start off with that. In fact, rather than me ask you about it, let's just get some callers straight on and let's get Evelyn from Croydon. Hello, Evelyn.
Good afternoon or good evening.
Hi, Evelyn.
It's Evelyn. Regarding Ed Miliband's, what he said about the referendum, as an ordinary layperson, I'm not a graduate, but I've had a good education, and I think it's clear what he says. And I'm just wondering what the papers have put around that, trying to infer that he's sending a very garbled message. So I want to ask Ed Balls, does he think that the papers, the 2 different papers, one saying there's going to be a referendum, one thing there isn't, does he feel that that's going to affect the Labour Party at the next election?
Right.
I don't see why, because, what he's saying, as far as I understand, we need to be in the EU, so does Mr. Cameron.
Evelyn, let's put what you said so far to Ed Balls. Ed, if you look at the newspaper headlines today, the FT saying Ed Miliband rules out referendum, the Daily Mirror saying Ed Miliband promises referendum, the BBC saying EU referendum unlikely, say Labour. I can't imagine any party spin doctors wanting a headline saying EU referendum unlikely, because it's not clear, is it?
Look, I think every time you make an important announcement, and this is an important announcement from Ed Miliband, it always takes a day or so for people to decide what they really want to think about it. And you're always going to have some newspapers who'll have an agenda one way or the other. David Cameron has been saying today, and clearly some Conservative newspapers want to say this means Ed Miliband ruling out a referendum. He's clearly not doing that.
But Financial Times is not in fact, has supported Labour most of the time over the past few years.
Well, they did in 1992. I was a leader writer at the time, but it's I'm not sure how many times since. I thought the FT headline wasn't right, to be honest. I think the position is clear, and Evelyn's right. Britain needs to stay in the European Union. Labour is clear about that. Business is clear about that. We would lose lots of jobs and investment if we were to leave the European Union. Europe's got to change. The status quo is not working well enough, and we've got a real agenda for change for jobs and living standards as we set out today. But we're also saying that if there is further transfers of power from Britain to the European Union, if that was on the table, then Labour will legislate to say there will be an in-out referendum. So we're not saying that there will be an in-out referendum because it depends upon if there's powers being proposed to go to Brussels. But we're clearly not ruling it out. In fact, we're doing the opposite. We're saying we're going to legislate to have the option of an in-out referendum. What Ed said in his speech today is he thinks it's...
Just before you go on to the speech, if you listen back to what you've just said in the podcast of this programme, I think you would think, well, that's a bit unclear. We talked to Gareth Thomas earlier on as well, and he came out with much of the same thing. And I was thinking, well, if I was at home listening to this, I still wouldn't really know if in Labour's gut they want a referendum or not. And that's important.
Labour will legislate a referendum lock. So if there's any transfer of powers proposed from Britain to Brussels, there will be an in-out referendum. We'll be saying yes in those circumstances, almost certainly, but only in the circumstance where there's a transfer. Now, Ed said in his speech today he thinks that is unlikely, but it's possible. So Labour rules out a referendum. Well, of course we're not ruling out a referendum. We're saying it's possible and we're going to legislate for it.
I thought politicians didn't deal in hypotheticals.
Well, but look, if you're David Cameron, you try and talk to Eurosceptics in your own party. And if you are a serious statesman, you deal with the real world. And the real world is, if we leave Europe, we'll lose loads of jobs and investment. But the status quo is not good enough. We need reform. Committing now to a referendum in 2017, as David Cameron has done, is completely destabilising for Britain. Nobody knows why he's doing it or for what purpose. He can't even tell us what he wants to negotiate. I think that 2017 referendum commitment is destabilising, political and mistaken. We are not going to sign up to that, but we're not going to rule out a referendum. Of course we're not. We're going to legislate there would be one if there's a transfer of powers.
Is the other Ed, as we shall now call him, is he saying that if I'm Prime Minister, I am going to renegotiate a lot of things with the European Union? Are you going to repatriate powers? If so, which ones? Because that's what David Cameron says he's going to do. He doesn't tell us which ones, but maybe you can trump him on that.
David Cameron can't tell you which powers because he knows his party will never sign up to any sensible list. What Ed Miliband has said today is this: we want longer transitional arrangements for any country joining the European Union before the Labour can move to Britain. We want to stop people being able to send child benefit back to their families living in other countries. Criminals who commit a crime in our country should be able to be sent back to their country even if their jail sentence is less than 12 months. We want the European Parliament not to have two houses, one in Brussels, one in Strasbourg. We'd like to see less budget spending on the Common Agricultural Policy. 5 things Labour wants and David Cameron can't deliver.
And I think most of the British public would agree with every single one of those. But
if we get all of those things,
from a good place. Yeah. But if you don't get all of those things, what then do you do?
Well, we say we want all of those 5 things. We don't need to have a referendum to get them. Threatening a referendum is going to make it less likely we get them. And if we can get some or all of those things, that's a real step forward. David Cameron is promising a referendum without telling you any of the things he's going to get. And let's be honest, nobody believes anybody listens to David Cameron in Europe anyway anymore.
Right.
The issue, though, is if we were to be in a situation, for example, because of the Eurozone becoming more integrated, but there was a question, would powers have to transfer from Britain to the rest of Europe? Would we have to pool more sovereignty? Would we have to give up some power? Yeah. In those circumstances, there is a cast iron guarantee Labour will give you an in-out referendum.
Of course, you did give a guarantee on the Lisbon Treaty for a referendum.
Not an in-out referendum.
Not an in-out referendum. No,
we're going to legislate for it in.
I'll give you that one.
It's a clear Labour lock.
Lots of calls coming in from all over the country. William is in Rotherham. Hello, William.
Hello there, yeah. I come from a traditional Labour. Hello there. Yeah, Willie from Rotherham. I come from a traditional, I see it as a Labour stronghold with the ex-mining community all around me, Sheffield, Doncaster, Ferdinand. And I think that Labour originally was for the working man. And then when I go around my community now and speak to people, our main concern is immigration. And the only way we can sort immigration out is by getting out of the EU. So I think whoever does a referendum on the EU, whether it's Conservatives, whether it's UKIP, then they're going to get the Labour votes. They're going to get the working man Labour votes because the Labour
William,
has lost the working man.
If David Cameron is the only one of the 3 main party leaders, and I said Conservative, Labour, Liberal Democrat, to offer a referendum, would you, as a lifetime Labour voter, really vote Conservative in those circumstances?
Definitely would. And I could go around my community now and talk to people. And anybody that's going to offer this referendum regarding the EU and obviously immigration, and then they're going to get the vote. And I think that they haven't been round knocking on any doors.
Willie, David Cameron doesn't want to leave the European Union. He wants to stay in the European Union. He's offering you a referendum without telling you what you're going to get from it, but then he's going to say you should vote to stay in. I have to say, most people who are working people in our country, working for Nissan or Honda, working for Rolls-Royce, for GC, working in media, in services across our country, people know that millions of jobs and huge amounts of investment depends upon us being able to sell into France and Germany and Poland and Spain. The idea that you would turn your back on all that job and all that investment...
No, I won't turn my back. Before we joined the EU, did we have prosperous business in the UK? Did we have core industry? Did we have all these industries? Yes, before the EU. I think just to think that if we get out of the EU, that's scaremongering, that then we're going to lose all these jobs and nobody's going to invest with them. I think that's ludicrous.
I've got to say to you, Willie, I've got to say to you, it's a massive gamble, because we know that these companies like Nissan and Honda have come to Britain to make cars to sell into the European single market. The businesses say, if we were leaving the European Union, it's a bit like Scotland leaving the rest of the United Kingdom. All these businesses are saying, if Scotland breaks from the rest of the UK, they're going to be moving their business out of Scotland into the rest of England. The same thing would happen here. People would be moving to other parts of the world. I think we should control immigration. We should put a priority on tackling the cost of living, getting jobs and investing in our National Health Service. If you're saying to me leave the European Union, that's not Labour's policy.
No. What I'm saying is, the current situation with immigration, how do we control it? At what point does my tax, the percentage of my tax, pay for free NHS for all Europe, free schools for all Europe? When is enough? When a pound out of my money, when it's all been spent?
But you were talking, Willie... But you were talking about what happened before we joined the European Union. We had huge immigration into our country in the 1950s from all around the world when we weren't in the European Union. It is true today. We have some immigration comes from the rest of the world and some from Europe, and we need to make sure we've got proper controls. We're saying stop people sending their tax credit back. I'm with you on that one. But if you cut yourself off from the rest of the world, we can't be Albania. We can't operate...
I don't want to cut yourself off. I think there's other countries, Australia, there's massive countries right in the world that still, they're not part of the EU, but still do business.
I've got to say to you, Willie,
and they're successful business.
The people I know in Australia, I was actually talking to the largest company in Australia yesterday who think that Britain being in the European Union is vital for that Australian company to be investing here in Britain. Australia, American companies would all say, Britain, walking away from Europe, you're mad. And what we've got to do is make sure we've got proper standards to make sure there's not undercutting of wages, proper controls on immigration. We've got to make sure that we cut out waste and bureaucracy. But UKIP and some Conservatives say, let's sort of go back to some romantic idea of Britain in the 1920s when we could exist on our own. It's not the real world, Willie.
Right, William, thank you very much indeed for that very spirited call. We will come back to that subject for a minute after the news and travel, but lots of other subjects to talk about. Particularly, I'd like you to ask what you want from the budget next week, and maybe how you think Ed Balls might respond to what George Osborne might say. This is LBC, it's 5:17.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
With the RAC, car insurance you can trust from the motoring experts.
Growing steadily for 14 years, delivering cost-effective, flexible security for a wide variety of businesses. Ward Security are now recruiting more SIA licensed security officers, supervisors and managers throughout the country to continue that growth. Could you be one of them? Customer service experience is essential. And your first step? See ward-security.co.uk and click on careers.
If you run a business that involves a lot of document processing, you know that by law you have to retain those documents for specific periods. It's quite a responsibility. So what happens if there's too much of it and it gets out of control? The Document Warehouse's secure off-site document storage is your perfect solution. Secure database backup plus document retrieval in under an hour for easy access. Find out more at thedocumentwarehouse.com. The Document Warehouse. The paperwork people.
Dolphin spotting on Cardigan Bay. Catching sight of the graceful osprey as it glides through the bright, dovey skies. Exploring the mighty cliffs and secluded beaches nestled along the Wales coast path. This spring, pack for the great outdoors. Pack for Wales. Visit wales.com.
18 minutes past 5. News headlines, Simon Conway.
Shadow Chancellor Ed Balls has told LBC Labour is not ruling out an in-out referendum on Britain's future in Europe, but would only hold one if more powers are to be transferred to Brussels. 2 women have died, 18 people are injured, and a number of others are missing after a gas leak caused an explosion at a building in New York City. US Secretary of State John Kerry will meet his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in London on Friday to discuss the Ukraine. LBC weather staying dry and clear into this evening before mist and fog later tonight, lows of 3 degrees. This is LBC, the travel news is next.
When you need something locally, head straight to Yell.com. You'll find a man to trim your hedge, a place selling locally sourced veg, and somewhere to buy a toy that's perfect for a baby boy. There are hairdressers for a quick chop and garages to stop your car going pop. Loads of spots for late night dinner treats and butchers selling the finest meats. If it's a piano teacher you're after, or a builder who's a real grafter, a place to pick up a bouquet, or somewhere nice to stay, whatever you need Yell.com.
For everything you need in your local area, head to Yell.com or download the free Yell.com app.
I'm Jo Louise Knight in the LBC Travel Centre, and Colin called to say there are problems at the Denham roundabout at the moment. He said there's an accident on the side as you head towards Ivor. It's partly blocked there with emergency services on the scene, but it's causing some queues. The A4 is struggling out of town from the Hammersmith flyover to the Hogarth roundabout. No word of anything there, just seems a little bit slower than usual. Only a one-boat service at the Woolwich Ferry caused by a technical problem, which is likely to be the case until Monday. That's causing long queues either side of the river, particularly bad on the southern side. On the Greenwich one-way system, it's down to 1 lane at the moment because of an accident just on the Greenwich Church Street section near Creek Road, so expect delays there. There's been an accident in Harlow in Essex. It means the A1025 is shut both ways between Howard Way and the Clock Tower. And in the West Midlands, the M6 is struggling northbound from junction 4A at the M42 to Castle Bromwich at 5 after an accident. Keeping you moving, your next travel updates in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With GoToMeeting. Don't be late. Hold your meeting online from anywhere.
Dreaming of your own business, a changing career, a new lifestyle? Visit the British and International Franchise Exhibition on the 14th and 15th of March at London Olympia. You can be your own boss with a franchise that matches your skills and ambitions. Discover franchised businesses approved by the British Franchise Association. Get advice from industry experts and attend informative seminars. Visit the British and International Franchise Exhibition on the 14th and 15th of March. Get your free tickets at franchisetickets.co.uk.
That's it! I'm leaving you!
Darling, what's wrong?
I've seen you looking at her on that interweb.
My e-receptionist? I was just updating the call routing. So easy.
So she's easy?
Easy to manage. So our calls will be answered, so I can take you away for the weekend.
Darling. With e-receptionist, all your calls are professionally answered, and you can update call routing anytime, anywhere, avoiding any dramas. Go to ereceptionist.co.uk for your free trial.
Oh, look at the mess.
I don't believe this.
Oh no, my ring's gone.
And the rest.
Oh, I don't care about the rest. I've had that ring since I was 17. You bought me that ring.
Please don't cry.
Oh.
I'll buy you a new ring, a big diamond one.
Oh, I don't want another ring. I want my ring.
If jewellery you love is stolen and can't be replaced any other way, AXA will work with you to make a copy. Jewellery replacement from AXA Home Insurance.
It's on my Xbox.
Oh, never mind. We'll get you a new one.
Little things mean a lot.
Search AXA Home Insurance. Valuables lost or damaged may not be covered. Policy limits and exclusions apply. Excludes Isle of Man, Channel Islands and Northern Ireland.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
23 minutes past 5. You're listening to Ian Dale at Drive. Ed Balls is with me doing his monthly phone-in with us. Very spirited call there from William in Rotherham. I suspect that he speaks for a lot of people, particularly in some of the northern marginal seats, which must be a worry to you.
There are people across our country who want to leave the European Union, and some of them vote UKIP, some of them vote Conservative. There's bound to be a small number who vote Labour as well. But the Labour Party is a pro-European party. I actually think most people in our country, most people in my constituency want to stay in the European Union, but not on any terms. They want to know that there's change, that it's actually going to help them, their families, jobs, cost of living. They want change, but withdrawal... I think most people would find that pretty frightening.
What would be the deal breaker for you, though, if there was something that the EU did and you thought, well, sorry, that much and no further?
Well, I think that's how the European Union works. What you've got to do from the inside is argue for change and reform. And sometimes when there's big decisions, you have to decide. So if the European Union had said you've got no choice but to join the single currency, that would be a deal breaker for us. But that wasn't what happened because, they tried to make the Maastricht Treaty say there wasn't a permanent opt-out. Even John Major didn't, to begin with, negotiate a permanent opt-out. We are not joining the single currency, and I think that's how it's going to stay for a very long time. But that doesn't mean that we can't be influential and be listened to. Look at the conflict in Ukraine and the international response to that. The European Union needs to lead that. Energy policy, climate change, proper standards in the labour market. These are all things where the European Union has an important bearing, and investment matters.
Now, most of the calls I can see that are coming in at the moment are on Europe. We're going to take one more on Europe. Then I want to move away. Particularly, I want to talk about the budget. Next week's budget, I think, is going to be the most important of this Parliament, maybe apart from the first one. It is effectively George Osborne's pre-election budget. There must be a lot of questions that you want to ask Ed Balls on that. And, of course, we talked last week about Labour's plan for jobs, particularly for the young unemployed. That was a key policy launched by Ed Balls and Rachel Reeves. So do call us in on that. 0845 6060 973. Let's talk to Julian, who's in Chelsea. Julian, hi.
Ian, good evening, gentlemen. I just wanted to ask a simple question. How are we going to educate the British public about Europe? I think that a referendum on Europe would have an emotional vote in England, almost in exactly the same way as the French presidential elections happened. Hollande was voted in on an emotional vote, and his rating has gone down from something like 76% to 17% when people realised after the event that, in fact, it was a disaster, that vote. And that's what I think is going to happen if we vote to come out of Europe. I think that people will realise post the event it will be a disaster.
I think the point that Julian makes, if you don't mind me saying, Julian, is actually very important about this use of the word emotion, because I think that that some people think, well, in the end, it's about jobs and investment, but other people feel, well, if we're part of Europe, does that mean that I've got to be sort of less British? And there was a view, if you remember, amongst really pro-Europeans 20, 30 years ago, that British decline means we've got to sort of reject British institutions and choose to be in Europe instead. Personally, I think that is out of date and out of touch. I've always argued for what I would call a hard-headed pro-British, pro-Europeanism, that you can be in Europe, but you can be British. And we can say the test is what's in Britain's national interest. We can have tough negotiations with the French and the Germans, and sometimes we can say no, but we can reach agreements which mean that we're all better off. And sometimes when I listen to...
You sound like Margaret Thatcher. She could have said every word of that.
Well... I don't think Margaret Thatcher took Britain out of the European Union.
She was actually a pragmatist. I mean, she had this reputation as being a big Eurosceptic, but actually she was very pragmatic.
Well, I've always been a pragmatist on Europe. I'm British. I want to put the British national interest first, but I think it is in our national interest to work with our partners. And if powers were going to be taken away from Britain, I think it's right in those circumstances we say, look, we'll have an in-out referendum to make sure the British public is signed up to that or not. I think, though, that when you listen to our opponents, I mean, often in the Conservative Party and in UKIP, our anti-European opponents are ideologues. They don't want to say, let's put the national interest first. They say, regardless of the national interest, we've just got to go it alone and be separate. I think David Cameron is just a bit weak, to be honest, on this issue. I don't think he's got a grip.
I think people who you regard as ideologues would say, well, we actually believe in Britain having sovereignty over its own Parliament, and it's Parliament actually ruling the British people rather than being ruled from outside Britain.
Well, and that is...
is that ideological?
Well, no, that is how things are today in Britain, but we choose as a British Parliament to pool some sovereignty with our European partners. But British Parliament is still sovereign. We're still in charge. We've not kind of... handed over power to a European constitution or a European superstate, and we shouldn't. Of course it's right, Ian. There are some people who are anti-European because they think, on balance, having looked at the evidence, they think we would be better off out than in. And that is a justifiable position. I think, though, that when I listen to many of the Conservative MPs in Parliament, I don't think in the end it's a balanced judgment. I think they've just decided they just want to get out because they hate Europe.
I mean, you've got quite a few Eurosceptic, and I don't call them anti-European, I call them Eurosceptic MPs yourself. I mean, I was listening to John Mann today, Graham Stringer, Kate Hoey. I could go on. There are lots on the Labour bench. OK, not as many as on the Conservatives, you're right. But, I mean, don't pretend it's just all in one party.
I think the Labour Party, the Labour Party 30 years ago divided over Europe. Harold Wilson in 1975 tried to unite the Labour Party with a referendum. He won the referendum. The Labour Party split and became anti-European, and we were out of power for 18 years. And
so you hope the Tories have a referendum?
Well, I think David Cameron seems to be rather on the Harold Wilson track at the moment. The fact is the Labour Party has resolved that we want to be a pragmatic and hard-headed pro-European party. I think that's true of the Liberal Democrats. To be fair to David Cameron, I think, I don't know, because none of us quite know what David Cameron believes, but I think that he probably agrees with Ed Miliband and Nick Clegg on Europe. The problem is, all the key people around Ed Miliband agree with Ed Miliband in Labour. All the key people around Nick Clegg agree with Nick Clegg in the Liberal Democrats. And pretty much every key figure around David Cameron disagrees with David Cameron on Europe, other than George Osborne, where, again, is George Osborne pro-European or anti-European? I've no idea, to be honest.
I don't either.
I don't know.
Just very briefly, because we'll need to go to the news and travel in just a second, but you are said to have been pushing for this change in policy, and you have been said to be more of a fan of the referendum idea than some of your colleagues. Is that right?
Well, I did not think that Britain and Labour should set our face against a referendum, and we've not done that. But nor did I think that saying, come what may, we're going to sign up to a referendum in the next Parliament, when all the evidence is that would be deeply destabilising to our relationships with our European partners and lose investment and jobs. I thought the Cameron policy was flawed from the outset. When he announced a year ago he was going for this policy, I remember a senior business figure saying to me, at last David Cameron has now launched the pro-Europe campaign. 12 months on, I don't think he's launched any campaign at all. He's made his divisions worse. Labour's united. We want to be in Europe, but we don't want to say to the British people, come what may, whatever happens, we're not going to give you a say. We're going to legislate for a referendum lock.
Many more of your calls to come. We're going to move away from Europe in the next half an hour. 0845 6060 973. We'll be talking to Rob in North Wales. He's the next caller, but if you'd like to get your call in now, that is the number. You can also watch us on our website. Just go to lbc.co.uk and you can see us in glorious Technicolor, or whatever the phrase is. This is LBC. It's 5:30 news time. Simon Conway has the news headlines.
The Shadow Chancellor is insisting that Labour is not ruling out an in-out referendum on Britain's future in Europe if the party wins the next election. Ed Balls has told LBC they would hold a vote if there was a change to the UK's relationship with the EU.
If there is further transfers of power from Britain to the European Union, if that was on the table, then Labour will legislate to say there will be an in-out referendum.
2 people have died and 18 others have been hurt after an explosion destroyed 2 apartment buildings in New York. The local utility board had received reports of a gas leak but didn't reach the area in time before the blast in Harlem. A court has heard claims MP Nigel Evans indecently assaulted a man in a bar during the Conservative Party conference in 2003. The former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons denies a series of sex offences. The FTSE 100 closed down 64 at 66.20, and LBC weather staying dry and clear into this evening in London and the southeast. Mist and low cloud will return later tonight with widespread fog patches by dawn, lows of 3 degrees and a similar picture across the UK. LBC News Time, it's 5:32.
I'm Jo-Louise Knight in the LBC Travel Centre, and on the clockwise M25 in Hertfordshire, there's a lane blocked on the exit slip at junction 19 to Watford as a van has broken down. Looking a little bit slow as you make your way towards it. In Denham, on the Denham roundabout just off the A40, there's an accident partly blocking the roundabout there as you try and head up towards Iver. That's causing some queues. Only a one-boat service at the Woolwich Ferry caused by technical problems, and the Greenwich one-way system on the western side remains down to 1 lane. That's following an accident earlier. The A1M in South Yorkshire, long delays between junction 38 at Red House going southbound towards junction 35 for the M18. That's as a lorry has broken down. The Felwell Viaduct on the M6 in Cheshire is queuing northbound in the roadworks between the Lim interchange at junction 20 and 21 for Woolston. And in Derby, the A61 Alfreton Road is queuing out of town towards the roadworks at Little Eaton Island. Keeping you moving. Your next travel updates in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With GoToMeeting. Relieve the stress. Hold your meeting online from anywhere.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
With the RAC, keeping you motoring this spring.
A year ago, my left knee completely packed up and I had to retire from the police service. The pain was so bad I was taking painkillers to get me through the night. But since starting Apos therapy, I now go to the gym every day and do 45 minutes on a spin bike. And now, no pain and no painkillers.
If, like Steve, you're suffering the agony of knee pain and looking for lasting relief, call Apos Therapy for a free assessment. Apos Therapy is a non-surgical, non-drug and clinically proven treatment for worn, damaged and arthritic knees. With thousands of patients successfully treated, call Apos Therapy for your free assessment on 0800 909 8009 or visit apostherapy.co.uk. Results may vary.
A house fire can take away a lifetime of memories in 2 minutes. About the time it takes to test all your smoke alarms. Fire kills. You can prevent it.
Daddy, I'm getting married. That's me footing the bill, thought Andrew. In truth, he'd been considering selling a property anyway. All the more reason to now. Of course, the dream would be receiving full asking price. Wouldn't that be something? But on average last year, My London Home achieved 98% of their recommended asking prices, many from international buyers. Not too shabby, thought Andrew. Now, I wonder if they write speeches too. My London Home. Passionate about property. Visit mylondonhome.com.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
5:35 here on LBC. Ed Balls is with me. If you'd like to ask him a question, 0845 6060 973. But before you do, let's go to Ben Kumar from Seven Investment Management for a quick business update. Payday loan companies, Ben, they're going to face more stringent regulation.
Yeah, from the 1st of April, the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, is going to take over regulating them and aims to make sure that everything is up to scratch. They estimate that the strict regulations could mean a quarter of payday loan companies leaving the industry. That's mainly because they've been lending to people who just don't have the capacity to pay the money back. That's got to stop for a start.
Well, Ed's colleague Stella Creasy will be cheering from the rooftops tonight, I'm sure. Now, two companies went public today. Which are they?
It's Poundland and Pets at Home.
There's a joke there somewhere.
I'm sure there is, and I'm sure I can find it on the internet if you give me a second. But Poundland was listed and it went to a 23% premium. It's now trading at £3.70. Pets at Home is 3% down on its initial listing price, which I know will sadden you as you're a long-time visitor to there.
Barking mad.
There you go.
That's about the best I can come up with. How did the markets do today?
The FTSE actually finished 1% lower at 6621, and the pound was relatively flat against the dollar at 166.
Ben, thank you very much indeed. That's Ben Kumar from Seven Investment Management.
LBC Business
with cyberstreetwise.com. Update your software swiftly and avoid cybercrime.
5:36. Are there any pets in the Balls Cooper household?
No, we don't have any pets.
Oh, that's
I think
terrible.
If you are a constituency MP and therefore you spend half your time in London and half in the constituency, and everybody moves up and down, it's really pretty hard to drag pets up and down. We had a fish once, but it became a bit unhealthy. It kept turning upside down and sinking. The only way to turn it around was
because you didn't clean the fish bowl out often enough.
But you know those Action Man toys where you have a submarine and if you pumped the submarine it would go under the bath. Well, we found that if you shoved that in the tank and pumped, it used to revive the fish.
There's a joke there somewhere too, but I'm not going to make it. Rob is in North Wales.
I shouldn't think Pets at Home are selling that one as one of their...
Probably not. Rob, steer us away from this minefield. What would you like to ask?
Good evening, chaps. I'm after talking about taxation.
Hi, Rob.
Like change. Hello. And one of my most frustrated things that I hear when I hear politicians talking about tax is the word fairness. And I think it's the most overused word in the world. I wonder why it's fair. What definition of fairness says that someone goes to university, gets a good degree, perhaps a master's degree or a doctorate, gets a very, very high-paid job. What definition of fairness says that outside of the normal taxation bracket, and obviously tax being percentage-based, they're going to pay more anyway because a percentage of a higher amount is a higher amount. Why is it fair that those people who've striven for success, is striven even a word? I've no idea, but strove for success for so long and worked so hard and indeed ended up in such debt through being in university and studying so hard for so long, what measure of fairness says that it's right for those people to have a punitive higher percentage than everybody else?
Good question. Ed Balls.
Well, my sister left school when she was 16. She didn't go to university. She's been paying taxes ever since she's been working when she was 16 years old. I went to university, and the state clearly makes a contribution through our expenditure on universities to people being able to go to university, and we pay some grants to people. We subsidise loans. People that go to university then, on average, earn more than people who don't go to university. So my sister was paying taxes in order to help me to go to university. The quid pro quo is that if I come out and I do earn more, I pay a bit more back in tax. Clearly, everybody gets the same personal allowance. For the first portion of your income...
Unless you earn over 120,000.
Well, everybody pays the same tax rate then on the first portion of their income. But as you earn more, we think it's fair, you don't like that word, Rob, to say that as your income gets higher, in a progressive tax system, you say to people, well, look, you have done better, and that's great because you're better off and you'll have, in some ways, a better quality of life. But we ask you, as your income gets higher, to pay a bit more out of that higher income, not the earlier income, to help with our universities, with our roads, with our National Health Service. I think it's good to live in a society where people who, for whatever reason, have bad luck or don't go well or haven't got the same kind of talents as you might have, Rob, that we help them with a free National Health Service and give them a chance to go to university. And then those people who earn a bit more, look, they should keep a substantial part of their income. Of course they should. It's a free society.
Rob,
but I think it's fair to say that they should pay a bit more.
Rob?
Yeah, absolutely. And I quite agree. As responsible citizens, it's up to the higher earners to shoulder more of the burden. I'm quite with you.
Good.
But they will, because it's percentage-based. So in countries that have perhaps introduced a flat tax rate for everybody, and I'll throw numbers out. I've got a little background. I'm a financial advisor. I'll throw numbers out and say if you had a personal allowance of around £16,000 a year and a flat tax rate of about 32% for everybody,
yep,
you'd actually gain more. People who were on the lower end wouldn't suffer because of the higher personal allowance. And, crucially, there'd be no incentive for tax avoidance anymore because they're not having to avoid that punitive higher rate.
Well, I think, but the reality is, Rob, but the reality is if you were to do that, and you definitely could do that with a flat tax, that would mean if you raise the personal allowance, people on lower incomes would be a bit better off. If you then had a flat tax which raised the same amount of money, then it would mean that people who are on 20, 30, 40, 50,000 pounds would pay considerably more tax than they pay today, and that anybody earning 70, 80, 90, 100,000 would pay considerably less tax than they do today. Your simplicity would come at the expense of a big redistribution from people on middle incomes to people at the top. And I think most people would say, well, actually, if you look over the last 20 years, people on middle incomes have increasingly seen their incomes squeezed, and people on the highest incomes have been getting much bigger rises in pay and dividends and those kind of things. And so people would think that what you were proposing would be pretty unfair in its impact.
Right, well, let's move on. Rob, thank you for that. Adam's in Southend. Adam, hi.
Hi, Adam.
Hi, Ed. The question is relating to the announcement about the jobs for young people. On the basis that one of the main characteristics of the last Labour government was spending money they didn't have, how can they justify a policy which costs £5 billion more than the problem it's purportedly trying to solve, particularly when part of that $5 billion is going to come from finishing the job that Gordon Brown did on raiding people's pensions pots?
Well, there's rather a lot of different allegations in that, and look, like you, I don't think governments should spend money that they haven't got, but there was also a global financial crisis, and if we hadn't stepped in at that point and bailed out the banks, there would have then been a depression which would have lasted decades, and you and me and everybody else would have been a lot worse off. So you have to make these decisions sometimes, and I think most people, including the Conservatives at the time, would say that was the right decision. I grew up in the 1980s, Adam, when youth unemployment became very high, stayed very high for a very long time. It actually damaged not only the people themselves, but whole communities. And I don't want to live in a society where you have whole communities where nobody's working and where you've had youth unemployment becoming entrenched long-term unemployment for years and years. I would much rather say to people who've been out of work for a year if they're young, look, we're not going to keep you paying your benefits. We're going to say, when you get to a year, we're going to guarantee a job, but you're going to have to take it. It's a minimum wage job with training. We know that's the best way to then get people to give them a chance of staying in work after that. If you're saying that instead we should stand back and say to people, look, you can just stay on benefits for year after year after year, that's not the kind of society I want to live in.
Adam, stay on the line. We'll bring you back in a couple of minutes' time because there's a couple of other issues related to this I want to put to Ed Balls. 0845 6060 973 is the number to call if you'd like to ask him a question. He's here with me until 6. You can, of course, watch us on our website as well. Go to lbc.co.uk. This is LBC. It's 5:44.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
With the RAC. Motorists, we salute you.
Don't wait weeks or even months to sell your house. With Property Rescue, you could exchange in 48 hours and even receive a cash advance within days. At Property Rescue, we buy properties in all conditions. There are no costs, and we also pay your standard legal fees. So whether you're facing mortgage arrears, in a broken chain, or just looking for a quick sale, Property Rescue could be the perfect solution for you. So what are you waiting for? The clock is ticking. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk to agree your cash offer within days. Property Rescue, a quick sale for cash.
Here's an exciting opportunity for minicab drivers. You could work for a company that offers up to 90% cash work and gives you a £300 bonus when you join. For fewer account jobs, more cash jobs and a £300 join-up bonus, talk to Greyhound Cars London today on 020 3388 3388 or apply online at greyhoundcars.co.uk. Greyhound Cars, running all over London, all day, every day.
Darling, what's wrong?
It's her. I've heard her answering your phone. She's there every time I call.
Who? My e-receptionist? She just answers my business calls.
Yes, her. She's so cheap.
Yes, just 30p per day.
E-receptionist answers all your calls and diverts them so your customers speak to the right people every time, avoiding any dramas. For your free trial, go to ereceptionist.co.uk.
It's 5:45. News headlines with Simon Conway.
Shadow Chancellor Ed Balls has told LBC he thinks most people consider the thought of leaving the EU pretty frightening. He says Labour will only hold an in-out referendum if more powers are to be transferred to Brussels. 2 people are dead and more than a dozen others are injured after an explosion in New York. The gas leak destroyed 2 apartment buildings. David Cameron's addressed the Israeli parliament in Jerusalem, calling on the country to pursue a peace deal with the Palestinians. LBC weather staying dry and clear into this evening before mist and fog later tonight, lows of 3 degrees. This is LBC. The travel news is next.
You are dynamic. Like a beatbox symphony, you quicken the pulse. Sure, you're made of metal, but it must be mercury, 'cause stillness doesn't suit you. You're an athlete on the blocks, head up and sprinting on the beat of bang. Your wheels, they roll like a barreling wave, which makes me the surfer, and I'm going to catch you if I can. You are dynamic. You are a Mercedes-Benz. And with £1,000 towards the finance deposit on all approved used C-Class and E-Class models at 9.9% APR representative, you've really got me thinking.
Search Mercedes-Benz approved used. Offer ends 30th of April 2014. Models over 90 days old. Credit subject to status. Mercedes-Benz Finance.
I'm Jo Louise Knight in the LBC Travel Centre, and the clockwise M25 looking a little bit slow now as you head towards the exit slip at junction 19 for Watford, where one lane is closed because of a broken down vehicle. A4 struggling out of town, so westbound from the Hammersmith flyover to the Hogarth roundabout, and only a one-boat service at the Woolwich Ferry caused by a technical problem. It's causing long delays either side of the river, particularly bad on the south side. Long delays around the Greenwich one-way system. Part of it is still down to one lane following an accident on Greenwich Church Street near Creek Road. The M1 in Northamptonshire queuing southbound between 15 at Northampton down to Milton Keynes at 14. There was an accident, but it has been cleared to the hard shoulder. In Lincolnshire, the A18 in Scunthorpe is shut westbound into the town centre between the Forest Pines roundabout and Brig Road because of an accident. And in West Sussex, the A27 in Crossbush is queuing eastbound after an accident from before Arundel Castle to Titnall Lane. Keeping you moving. Your next travel updates in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With gotomeeting.co.uk. Fast, easy online meetings. Go online for a free 30-day trial.
GCSEs, A-levels.
For exam success without the stress, only one name stands out. Justin Craig. A Justin Craig Easter course kickstarts revision, consolidates knowledge, boosts confidence and improves exam technique. With over 30 years' experience, Justin Craig has helped more than 100,000 students secure their university place. For Easter revision course details, visit justincraig.ac.uk. Justin Craig. Just in time.
Oh, look at the mess.
I don't believe this.
Oh no, my ring's gone.
And the rest.
Oh, I don't care about the rest. I've had that ring since I was 17. You bought me that ring.
Please don't cry.
Oh.
I'll buy you a new ring, a big diamond one.
Oh, I don't want another ring. I want my ring.
If jewellery you love is stolen and can't be replaced any other way, AXA will work with you to make a copy. Jewellery replacement from AXA Home Insurance.
They took my Xbox.
Oh, never mind. We'll get you a new one.
Little things mean a lot.
Search AXA Home Insurance. Valuables lost or damaged may not be covered. Policy limits and exclusions apply. Excludes Isle of Man, Channel Islands and Northern Ireland.
At Back2, we've been advising customers on back-related problems for over 25 years. Based in the heart of London, our showroom offers over 400 products that could relieve your back pain. We source products from all over the world, such as office chairs, sit-stand desks, beds, mattresses, orthopedic pillows, home chairs, children's furniture and much more. Come and see us for free advice at Back2. Open every day in Wigmore Street and online at back2.co.uk. Get back to living with Back2.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
10 to 6 here on LBC. Ed Balls is with us, taking your calls. If you go to lbc.co.uk, you can watch us as well as listen to us. Adam in Southend was... a little wave there from Ed. Adam in Southend is asking...
To our viewer.
No, there's hundreds
of them. Is there?
Adam in Southend has been asking about Labour's new job scheme. Of course, the accusation from the Conservatives is that you've said that you'll pay for this through an increased banker's bonus, which you've spent many times over. And, I mean, I haven't got it here, but I've got a list. They say there's 10 times you spend it over. I think it's actually 5, but even 5, that's quite a lot of money to spend repeatedly, isn't it?
I'm saying to George Osborne and to the Liberal Democrats that we should ask the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility to audit all the tax and spending commitments we make in our manifesto to make sure that we've not double spent the money and that the sums add up. And Danny Alexander said yesterday that he was open to that. Robert Choate, the head of the OBR, has said today that that's something which can be done, and we need to get this sorted out and agreed by the early summer. George Osborne, though, is still refusing because he would much rather be able to make political slurs like that rather than actually have a proper debate. The only thing that the Labour government in the next Parliament will spend the bank bonus tax on is our jobs guarantee, categorical.
So not on empty shops?
No.
But which was promised, though, at one point.
No, it wasn't, Ian. What happened in 2011... 4 years ago, when we were at the beginning of the Parliament, is we said to George Osborne, for that budget, if he wanted to do something sensible, what he should do then was, and we had a list of things, and he didn't do it. And we're saying now, we're making a manifesto commitment, and there is only one way we're going to spend the bank bonus tax and the pensions tax relief money, and that is on the jobs guarantee. And the Tories, if they really wanted to put the money where their mouth was, they would join me and the Liberal Democrats in a cross-party consensus to raise the level of debate by asking the OBR to audit our manifestos. It can be done before the election. I wish they would, and they don't want to because they want to carry on playing the same old political games.
I did ask Sajid Javid, the Treasury Minister, about this a couple of days ago, and he said no, it wouldn't be appropriate. And I said, well, why are you using Treasury civil servants to do it? Surely that's using them for party political purposes. And he said, no, absolutely not. So,
well, they actually use Treasury civil servants on the basis of political assumptions set by conservative politicians and advisors, which are not even accurate.
And he said that you did that when you were in the Treasury too.
Well, listen, why don't we raise our game?
Did you?
No. Why don't we raise our game by asking the independent OBR to do that? I would much rather your callers knew on the basis of that independent kite mark what actually we're proposing and whether the sums add up. And I tell you, our jobs guarantee will get young people in the long-term unemployed back to work. It's fully costed, it's fully paid for, and the Tories are desperate because they know there's a cost of living crisis. They've got no answers on jobs and living standards, and all they want to do is attack and play political games.
20 seconds. Adam in Southend, what's your response to Ed?
Well, I mean, the first response is that how can you make a promise based on someone else doing an audit for you when you haven't even done it yourself? If I did that in business, I'd be hung by the rafters.
But what I'm saying, Adam, what I'm saying is that
I haven't even checked if I've got.
What I'm saying is, we'll say, here's the tax we'll raise, the bank bonus tax. Here's the guarantee we'll make to get young people off benefits and into work, and we'll ask the independent OBR to tell you and everybody whether or not our sums add up. That's what an auditor does, and that's a good thing for them to do. And don't you think that all of us political parties should put us through that same quality check to make sure our sums add up?
Right, I'm not going to go back to Adam.
Well, I hope he agrees.
We're near the end of the show. Need to get near the end of the hour. Ian is in Harrow. Hello, Ian.
Hi, Ian.
Hello, Ed. I'd like to ask you, you said earlier that you believe the top rate of tax for personal taxation should be 50% at the moment, but the current top rate is the wrong rate. Have I got that right?
That's right, yes.
So the current rate at the moment is not 50%. The current rate at the moment is a 60% marginal rate of tax over 100k, between 100 and 120, plus national insurance, which can be up to 12%. So actually, the top rate of tax is currently 72%. So I'm assuming that we're going to get a 22% tax cut from Labour?
No, the 50% rate didn't apply until £150,000. And at that point, the marginal rate was that 50% rate. The government has cut for people earning over £150,000 on incomes above that, the marginal rate from 50% to 45%. And I've said that while we need to get the deficit down, and I've said we will balance the books, get the deficit gone and national debt falling in the next Parliament as soon as we can. While we're doing that, we can't justify a top-rate tax cut over £150,000 for the richest people when everybody else is seeing their living standards falling year on year. Most people are worse off. I don't think that's fair.
So you are planning a 22% tax cut between 100 and 120 with the removal of this ludicrous removal of personal allowances. And what about national insurance, which is basically an income tax? It's really convenient, how politicians ignore that. And we're sitting here, and on my tax list, I pay tax, whether it's called national insurance or income tax. I'm paying the best part of 72% tax on a part of my income, and I don't earn 150k.
Well, all I'm doing, look, you may or may not have a legitimate argument with George Osborne, the Chancellor, about what tax you're paying. The only thing I'm saying is if your income was to go over £150,000, then the change I'm proposing is over £150,000. We wouldn't cut the top rate from 50 to 45%. So I'm not talking about the income range you're talking about. I'm talking about incomes over £150,000. And so if you're below that, the change I'm proposing won't affect you at all.
Ian, thank you very much. Who's the bossy one in your house, Ed? Is it you or Yvette? I have a reason for asking this.
I don't think we're... I mean, obviously Yvette, but I don't think we are either of us too bossy. And, as I think with most families, the... kids are far more bossy than parents.
Have you heard of
Although my mother-in-law, just to be absolutely clear, she's not bossy.
No, I never
just
said
just
she
to clear
was.
that up. Just to be clear.
I'm glad you brought that up
she's
yourself.
Not bossy. She's not bossy.
Are you aware of the #BanBossy campaign?
No.
Dana in Greenwich says, are there not enough women in top business roles because of words like bossy? Apparently this campaign has been launched because fear of being labelled bossy has a real impact on girls' lives. They're more likely than boys to fear that taking leadership roles will make them seem bossy. They're less likely than boys to be called in class. And as they enter adolescence, they're still self-esteem plummets.
Well, I think... I hope that Yvette is the kind of mum who's made sure that our daughters stand up and speak up for themselves, and I hope that they will always be able to do that in whatever they do in life without ever feeling that speaking up means that they are somehow going to be stereotyped or caricatured because they're a girl rather than a boy. Hopefully that's not the way in which our society is going to work in the future. I have to say, we had this debate in the House of Commons yesterday, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say it, where we were pointing out there's no women members of the Monetary Policy Committee at all in Britain at the moment, and the Financial Secretary, Mr Javid, said that was because there were no women who merited getting the job.
He didn't quite say that, did he?
He said our decisions are made on merit, and that's the answer.
Appointments are made on merit.
I know, but come on.
Not quite the same.
No women at all.
There have been. There have been, haven't there?
There certainly have.
Bridget Roosevelt was on.
Deanne Julius was very good. Kate Barker was very good.
Right.
I mean, we had a number of women.
Very quick call from Caroline in Bounds Green. Hello, Caroline.
Hi, Caroline.
Oh, hi. Oh, hi there. Hi, Mr. Balls. I was wondering if you can answer this question. I worked hard all my life. I don't have a pension, but I bought a property through hard work as a buy-to-let. And obviously, if you get in next term, you'll be the Chancellor of Exchequer. And I wonder what your stance is, because there's all this talk about all these rich Russian oligarchs and foreign investors, but I'm not in that.
Sure. Okay, Caroline. So, Ed, what are you going to do about capital gains tax?
Well, the rules have always been that on your main residence, you don't pay any capital gains. But if it's your second or third residence, so if you're a buy-to-let person, you've got a number, then you would pay capital gains on that. We're not proposing to change that. We are saying that for properties worth over £2 million, we're going to look at how we can find some kind of tax on those properties, which we think actually would disproportionately go to people with their second or third homes, people from abroad buying homes in London. We want to do that in a fair way and to make sure it's properly uprated. We are not proposing to add capital gains tax burdens onto housing. Actually, Caroline, we were the government who, 97, cut the capital gains tax rate from 40% down to 10% in order to try and support people who are investing and reinvesting in their businesses. And I thought that was a good reform.
Caroline, thank you for your
Thanks,
call.
Caroline.
Ed Balls, thank you very much. We'll do it again next month.
We're not done, are we?
We are, I'm
We've
afraid.
only
That
just
was
got
an hour.
going.
I know. I'd happily do it for another hour, but
How many of your listeners would like another couple of hours talking about the European referendum?
They can tweet and text in and tell us that, but they're not going to get it, I'm afraid, today. Next time, we might do it for a little longer.
Next time, we must talk about my marathon run, my London marathon run for Whiz Kids and Action for Stammering Children.
How do people donate?
They go on to my Just Giving page when it launches in a couple of weeks. Action for Stammering Children, Whiz Kids, London Marathon. I'm going to get below 5 hours.
Ed Balls, thank you very much. In the next hour, we're going to be talking about 3-parent babies, can you believe? This is LBC. That's up next.
On FM, online, on your mobile, and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
It's 6 o'clock. Good evening, I'm Simon Conway. Shadow Chancellor Ed Balls is insisting Labour is